Welcome to GLAG 21 Taking Action. We're coming at you in the middle of your live event here on a Friday that culminates a week of a lot of learning, a lot of interaction, a lot of connections, and a lot of collaborations. I'm Tobin Redwine.
And I'm Melanie Miller Foster.
Dr. Miller Foster and I have a great opportunity today to help introduce you and our audience in GLAG to two real industry leaders, world shapers, and fantastic humans who have done a lot to teach us about taking action and about global connections. So the purpose of the session today is to really hone in on that theme of taking action. We've got two individuals who have taken action on causes that they care deeply about, including food security and some others that you're going to learn about throughout their careers. They're powerful educators and mentors who are dedicated to equipping the next generation to solve issues facing our global society, just like food security. We've got a lot to learn from them. Dr. Miller Foster, tell us about our guests.
Yeah, so, you're going to be blown away by these bios. So first, I'm going to introduce Dr. Ann Deaton. She's the founder and president of Children's Grove, which is a Columbia nonprofit that promotes kindness in youth and the community. Her professional career was in higher education and state government and was focused on special needs populations, including the elderly and persons who are cognitively and physically challenged. Her work in community development has a focus on poverty and hunger. It began early in her college years when she engaged in volunteer service in the US and abroad. So lots of experience there, everyone. And then we also have Dr. Brady Deaton. He was the Chancellor of the University of Missouri, and he now serves in emeritus status as Director of the Deaton Institute for University Leadership in International Development at Missouri. He was appointed chair of the Board for International Food and Agricultural Development by President Obama in 2011. And earlier in his career, he served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Thailand, where he taught vocational agriculture. And get this, he did it in the Thai language, right? All right, so without any further ado, let's get started.
A great professional development experience around global learning in agriculture online.
But we realized that people were really excited about having these conversations
because agriculture is so different in different countries.
Ladies and gentlemen around the world.
With that, I think we're just about ready to get things kicked off.
And now for the good stuff.
So our first question is a real easy one. So please just tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you met.
I can begin that. After my Peace Corps service in Thailand, actually, where I served teaching in a vocational agriculture school in northern Thailand, I taught animal science subjects. I helped coach the basketball team in my spare time, and I would help out with conversational English with our English teacher. I enjoyed that very much, and even got out in the field and helped work with water buffalo and talk about how we could turn water buffalo into milking buffalo, working with some of the local community development efforts. So it was a wonderful time. I enjoyed it very much. I learned a lot about the culture, learned a lot about Buddhism as a religion, and had been well trained in the summer at the University of Michigan. After I returned to school at the University of Kentucky, I was asked to participate in a YMCA work camp project in Bogota, Colombia one summer. And then the following summer, I was asked to lead a project in Ecuador. And one of the participants in that project was now my wife, Ann, whom we did not know each other, even though we're both at the same university. But I was finishing up my master's degree. She was finishing up her undergraduate degree in English at UK. And so she was a participant, and we got acquainted, and we got married the following summer. And that's how we got acquainted, and we've been moving ahead ever since with our 4 children, moving them around as we finished up our educational degrees and moved from institution to institution and working in universities.
I have a little add-on to that story. When I was in high school, and I know a lot of our educators out there are working with high school students, I really believed in experiential learning, and I had no idea what that word meant, never heard that phrase, but at that time, that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to be really involved in things, and I was very concerned about migrants and workers. And I remember writing to the bishop of our district. I was in a Catholic school, saying, I want to go work in the migrant fields. And he wrote me back and he said, why don't you wait till you get to college and you learn a little more and you're a little older, you can then participate in these service learning activities. And I was sorry to wait, but boy, did I get a wonderful one. First, I was an Appalachian volunteer at the University of Kentucky and went into the mountains. And then I decided I wanted Peace Corps, but could I really stay away 2 years from my parents when there was no telephone calls or any of that going on at that time? And so one night I went to hear about this program on Ecuador, and Brady was up on stage talking. I arrived late. I sat in the back row. But I want to tell you that students can inspire other students. Peer mentoring was going on that night, and Brady was standing there post Peace Corps, post another, even after Peace Corps volunteer work in Colombia in South America, but talking about this trip to Ecuador. And he was saying, you know, make your time here count, and you'll ride the crest of this kind of an experience your whole life. So I was hooked from the moment, and I really am also a believer in love at first sight.
Melanie, if I can, may I keep going for a moment here? I jumped
Please.
right into my international work in Thailand, but I'm looking at Melanie's 4-H club emblem that she's wearing proudly. And it reminds me that I really became interested in international work in elementary school because of the 4-H club program, and particularly the international, what was called the International Farm Youth Exchange Program, or IFE. And I always wanted to be in IFE, to go to India or Africa or South America and work with the people and learn their culture. And then when I got in college, that opportunity was not there for me because it required support at the county level. That my county was already moving to build a 4-H camp and they couldn't afford it. So that led me to the Peace Corps. But that brings me full circle, because after I stepped away as chancellor and went into my Chancellor Emeritus status, I have a good friend who was president of New York University, John Sexton. And John invited me to a session in New York to talk about higher education. And as we talked, and this was primarily a group of Ivy League presidents whom we had all worked with in the Association of American Universities, which Missouri was a member of. But I mentioned how the land grant concept reminded me of the pledge we make in 4-H Club, which I'd been speaking about since my elementary school days. And John asked me, he said, well, what is that pledge, Brady? And I said, oh, it's real simple and it's fundamental. I said, I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my country, my community, and the world. Well, he was so taken by that, as were the other presidents. None of them had ever heard that before.
Wow.
He asked them about that. So then at dinner that day, I had to say it again. And then it was repeated again in a meeting later on. So 4-H Club suddenly became the driving set of values for what we in higher education today in the United States ought to be thinking about. That's what we were talking about, as to what really can drive us forward as a society. So 4-H Club has always meant a great deal to me. So Melanie, I salute you're wearing your 4-H Club emblem.
I can only imagine the pride your 4-H Club advisor must be feeling, right?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I want to do a little add-on to credit 4-H a little bit more. So, you know, we have the 4-H pledge, but we also have the 4-H motto, which is to make the best better.
Yes.
And, you know, when you start off in 4-H as a little clover bud and you know, live that motto throughout your youth, it kind of sticks with you for the rest of your life. And I'll tell you, this is actually a principle that I personally have applied to the Global Teach Ag Network and to the GLAG conference. You know, I kind of drive Daniel crazy a little bit where, you know, every year he wants to kind of say like, wow, we had more participants or we had more sessions and they were great. And I'm like, yeah, but we can make it better. you know, and it's that constant striving, you know, to say like, yeah, we did something great, let's make it better. And
Right,
so,
right,
you know,
right.
I really appreciate that influence in my life too.
And those early influences are so important. Dr. Ann Deaton, you mentioned earlier an experience like that. You ride the crest of that wave through your career. I just thought that was brilliant and metaphoric in a way that really resonates with us. And I'm thankful for those waves and organizations like 4-H and foundational experiences like you had. And I'm thankful for waves like Love at First Sight, because look at how far you guys have come and all the lives you've touched since then. Brady, you mentioned, you know, wanting to go to Iffy and see those other sites. I grew up in rural Texas. I was happy when we got to get to Amarillo. I thought that was the center of the universe. So I'm thankful
Right,
to
right.
see more.
Yeah.
And just like you mentioned, riding the crest of waves through your experience. Another phrase that we heard you say earlier in the week that has really struck a tone with us as educators is that, you know, as an educator, you looked for an opportunity to put the wind under someone's wings. So we were wondering if each of you can think back to educators that you've had. When was a time that somebody put the wind under your wings, and how has that propelled you on further in your career to take action?
So I had two very distinctive things, and I'll try to be succinct. One was in high school and one was in college. When I was in college, when I was in high school, excuse me, they had tracks, college bound and kind of vocational education. And initially, I wasn't college bound, but then I was taken out of college bound because sister said I was flirting with the boys. Well, I proceeded 2 years in the non-college track, which is a wonderful track. I was happy. I didn't realize that this might have some implications for going to college. I was just happy. And a sister came to me and said to me, Anne, you are not in the right track, and I am going to work with you. I wasn't even very close to that sister. I didn't know she was observing me. And she took me after school for maybe 4 to 6 months and worked with me to patch me up so that I could be replaced and be thinking seriously about what skills I had and the opportunity before me to go to college. That was a huge thing. She did that on her own. She sought me out and put wind under my wings. And then when I was in the university, after returning from Ecuador, I realized I was so overtaken by the importance of understanding culture and intercultural understanding. And I decided, and now I'm a senior, that I'm going to switch from English to applied anthropology. And I want, by the way, because I already had a scholarship to go on to graduate school, I want one in applied anthropology. Of course, I had no coursework. But I went to a young assistant professor and told him my story, and he realized the passion that I had for going into applied anthropology because I really wanted to be part of social change. And he also, just like the sister in high school, worked with me. I took 5 or maybe 6 even courses. It was like 18 or 21 hours in anthropology, proved myself, and earned the scholarship to go on to graduate school in applied anthropology. But they worked with me closely. They advised me neither one of these teachers needed to put in that extra effort. But I have thanked them my whole life because they made such a huge difference in my life.
Well, speaking for me, you know, you think about what wonderful teachers you've had that have made a difference in your life. I went to a 2-room school for the first 8 years of my life in Eastern Kentucky. So I really only had 2 teachers, and Rachel Hughes in the first 4 grades and Perry McCracken in the next 4. They were both wonderful. But I think one of the best things they ever did was when they told my mother, not me, but they told my parents that I could be anything I wanted to be. And, you know, I'd never really given it much thought at that time. But I realized if I kept reading and applying that I could sort of do what I wanted to do. I then had wonderful high school teachers. And then in the university, my first advisor in college was a man that I suspect some of the audience would likely know, Robert Walton, who went on to found the American Breeders' Service in DeForest, Wisconsin, and is still a retired scientist writing his memoirs, but is a brilliant geneticist. And he was such a powerful person. But there was one individual that pervaded all of that, and that was my first cousin, Oliver Deaton, who lived across the mountain from me and preceded me through school and always guided my actions. He went on to finish his PhD in genetics also at the Michigan State University. He worked in Costa Rica and Bolivia, went in the Peace Corps with his wife after he had had a full career. And throughout my life, he's given me the kind of guidance that was necessary to steer my professional accomplishments. He's now living in San Antonio, Texas, and we stay in close touch. But people like that do things for you and inspire you in ways that you realize more as time goes on, just how vital they are to everything that you've done.
Melanie, one of my favorite things about their responses is that, and Ann and Brady, I think this is just fantastic. You're mentioning both local experiences that have been so foundational to you, but then also how they have global implications and global connections. And that's what GLAG's all about, and the importance of community, both locally and globally. So thanks for just focusing us on all of that.
Right.
And I think the message here really is that educators of all kinds can make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think it's really useful, to think back, and hear your examples, think back in our own lives. But also, this has been a really tough year for all educators. And, speaking of refocusing, let's refocus on like how important educators are.
Yeah.
You matter.
Right.
And that's a huge reason why we're doing this today. And,
Right.
thank you both Deatons for sharing those great examples. That's
Yep.
like what Daniel calls soul candy.
That's right. That's good soul candy.
Yeah.
And teachers do matter, and teachers are a resilient bunch. Those that are watching
Right.
in our audience, we're thankful for their resilience. I'll take a minute to plug my shirt, like our group Field of Hope. They took action.
Yes.
We train secondary teachers in Uganda, of whom many of which are participating in this conference this week. And though we couldn't
Wonderful.
interact in person this year because of COVID, we had a great pivot, and we found a way to recreate that community virtually. And so just like you guys talked about how important those educators are, I see them doing it in Uganda through Field of Hope as well. So apoyo, my friends.
And Tobin, you've just emphasized an important point, and that is that we gain our inspiration from people at all levels that really are teaching us as we go through life. And whether we're working with a colleague who teaches us certain things, we learn as we interact with other human beings, if we're open and sensitive to what they're bringing to the table.
Absolutely. So, we're talking about taking action. It's the theme of GLAG 21. And so, our next question, I'm really excited to hear your responses. Can you tell us how you're taking action on the causes that you care about?
Well, right now, we have been very, very active with continuing to volunteer at the University of Missouri with our institute, the Deaton Institute, which was created when when I stepped away as chancellor. The board of curators asked us what we felt strongly about that we would like to continue doing. And we wanted to contribute to global food security and reduce extreme poverty. And we began working on engaging faculty, but particularly students in that cause. And that's evolved into what our Deaton Scholars Program is all about, where every semester, we've had 50 to 70 students working with us outside the classroom, addressing the issues of poverty and global food security. And that global food security applies to whether you're working in Uganda or Vietnam or in the community of Colombia or with your local church community, wherever it is, local or global, you can be engaged in these issues because it matters there. And so we talk and work with them, put them in small groups so that peer counseling, peer mentoring can be a key part. And the students come from all disciplines in the university and from all academic levels, sophomores, juniors, seniors, graduate students and professional students, medical students, law students. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful program that keeps us excited and has led to, we think, many accomplishments of students who work every semester on a project together in groups of 4 or 5 students that work together. And they develop a project. We try to give that some recognition and some push along to bring it into more fruition as they go forward. So that has been one of the key things that I've been involved in, along with my work with the Board on International Food and Agricultural Development, which serves in an advisory role with USAID. And then in that sense, I've been able to really continue with one of my deep, deep passions of working in other countries, visiting other countries, bringing models back that help inform how the United States international development policy takes place. I completed 10 years of work. I just have completed, literally in the last week, my term on BIFAD, and it was a wonderful period for me.
One of the things that I would add about the Deaton Scholarship Program that I think has relevance for the conference is that we really work, as Brady said, towards a transdisciplinary approach to bring in multiple disciplines, but not just multiple disciplines working on the problem of hunger and extreme poverty that would stay in their own silos to work on that problem, but to get them truly in an interdisciplinary mode where they are sharing concepts from these disciplines, as well as each student's own lived experience. So the value of respect for themselves, that they have a unique background, but in working with a team, they come to respect that everybody else has a unique background and everybody else is coming from a different discipline that has something to give to this problem. And finally, respect for this mission. When students work on food insecurity and hunger issues, they are giving of their time and talents to the most significant of problems, because people must eat first before anything else can happen in their lives. So we're very proud of these students and also the value of respect for themselves, for the collaboration of their team, and for understanding the worth of their mission. In terms of, I'll just briefly add a couple of the things that I'm involved in that actually grow out of something that I've learned with Brady through our life experiences, and that is to take action, to voice your ideas, to go on and tell someone about an idea you have, about a problem you might be interested in or passionate about. Because, kind of as Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a very small group of people can change the world. And that's been my experience. So after Sandy Hook, like the rest of the nation, I grieved like all adults and parents and everyone. And I was trying to think what could be done in my community. And so I spoke to a small group of people a few days after Sandy Hook and said, let us find a way to stand up for these children and honor any child, anywhere, anytime, who has met harm's way. But also let us stand up for our children in what we do in the future to create a culture of kindness in our community, kindness that is made operative through mutual respect, through sincere compassion, and through meaningful inclusivity. And finally, to support the emotional and mental well-being of our children, our youth, and our university students. And a small group of people in Columbia, Missouri took that and they developed beautiful things. And we are a not-for-profit today that works through community education, the arts, and engaging the environment to meet that mission. And had I not voiced it, had I not had respect for my own idea and respect for the people that could work together on this, it never would have happened. So I think it's very, very important. And most recently in COVID, having learned that, I did the same thing. And because of my age, I couldn't go out and volunteer at the church or in a food pantry. So I thought, what can I do at home? And I did come up with an idea, and I did call some friends. And the idea was to use food to help with food insecurity. And we created a recipe site where people submit recipes, but on that site, they are nudged, they are encouraged to give to organizations in our community that are addressing food insecurity. They submit recipes, they talk about why those recipes are meaningful. And the site is called The Common Ingredient because the common ingredient is love. And we all love preparing and serving food to our families, but we have to love others who are food insecure and make that possible for them as well. So again, just voicing an idea or responding to someone else's idea. It's not only your ideas, but someone else's. And I think when young people learn that and have self-confidence in their ideas, that's a very big step forward.
What a great way to model that behavior as an example for the rest of us, as an example for our audience members. What a great just living embodiment of that theme, take action. So I'm really thankful that the GLAD community has a chance to learn from your examples and from the Deaton Institute examples, from Brady, from all of the lessons that you guys have been teaching us. So we're just really thankful for our time and for our opportunities to get to learn from you guys.
Tobin, can I put a fine point on the modeling point you just said?
I'd love to hear about it.
That is in the Children's Grove. Today, we have Children's Grove Youth Kindness Ambassadors in all of our high schools in Columbia, Missouri, who are in their groups. They come up with all kinds of projects and all kinds of ideas to promote acts of kindness and inclusivity and compassion.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I do want to mention too, just to bring in some of the conversations that have taken place earlier this week. So we're recording this in advance. And Daniel explained that to you up at the top. We're really excited that the Deatons are getting their vaccination right at the moment this is airing on Friday. So, we're really excited about that. But we already have the Whova app open, and I've already seen a teacher respond to an icebreaker prompt. And the prompt was, if you could teach anything, what would you teach? And they said that they would teach self-confidence. They would teach students to believe in themselves. And that's just the message that you're sending, Anne. And so, I think that that's something that, our community is exploring together. And so, if you haven't checked out the Whova app in the community space, there's some really neat conversations going on there as well.
All right. Well, we're thankful for our time with you guys, Brady and Ann, for our GLAG Live section, Take Action. We're going to wrap it up right now, and I'm going to encourage our participants to submit messages to Brady and Ann through Whova or contact through the other channels in the GLAG community, because we can all take action and we can live by those following examples.
So thank you for having us. You have honored us deeply, and we wish health and success in all of the endeavors of everyone participating in this wonderful conference.
Yes, thank you and best of luck. And it's so exciting to see you carrying the positive message that our backgrounds have enabled us to go forward with, and that you have as well. So I wish everyone the best of luck in the work they're doing.
Welcome back. back for the extended cut. As you guys know, Ann and Brady Deaton are just a fantastic treasure of information and examples for us to learn. And they model taking action on a real deep level for all of us to learn about. So we had to bring them back for more. So thank you for tuning in here on this platform for our extended conversation with Doctors Ann and Brady Deaton. Dr. Deaton, could you tell us a little bit more about the Deaton Institute and the foundational principles and values that guide the work you guys do?
Yes, when we began working with students on these hunger and poverty and global food security issues, we continued to formulate that around 4 value statements that had been developed at the University of Missouri to guide the entire institution. And I'd use those in my years as chancellor with my own staff. We always asked the question of whether those values were demonstrated in the work that we were doing. So to the students that we're working with, we have the semester's program built around 4 pillars, those values. Respect, which Ann talked a lot about a moment ago, respect for yourself, for others, and to the mission and the culture that you represent. Responsibility, responsibility for your own contributions and for those of others. So respect, responsibility, discovery, which is at the heart of a major university, particularly our land-grant universities. Discovery of knowledge, discovery of yourself, discovery of others, and how you can put that together in a way that makes a difference in the world. So respect, responsibility, discovery, and then excellence. That's the 4th pillar. Excellence in all that you do. And because we focus those values in a learning framework that's oriented toward interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary initiatives, it's that excellence of your own disciplines you bring to bear to the discussion that helps you then create a larger framework of excellence in all that you're doing. You know, we had a Nobel Prize winner at Missouri a couple of years ago in chemistry, and he used, when he accepted his Nobel Prize, he used the concept of a flower, the petals of a flower. And you only have the beauty that you create of a flower with each of those petals of excellence. And so we very much like to emphasize to the students how much it takes music and humanities and nuclear science and engineering and animal science and pathology to bear to really create that super knowledge upon which we can take those steps forward. So that's always meant a great deal to us. And I think it's inspired our students semester after semester to be excellent themselves and contribute. Did you want to say anything, Ann, further about that?
Well, I think you did a good job on those very important values that we really underscore in the Deaton Scholar Program. In fact, every one of our sessions is named for one of those values that we have with the students. But also, I would reiterate something I said earlier about the Children's Grove values of mutual respect, and we've discussed that a lot, and sincere compassion. But I'd like to focus on the one in kind, the attribute of kindness, that we talk about, meaningful inclusion. So there is a great discussion today, and youth are learning the importance of diversity, and we're learning it as teachers and community members. But when we say meaningful inclusion, we're talking not just about having people from diverse backgrounds at the table, but that their lived experiences and their values and their ideas are fully integrated, that they are voiced. So they're not just at the table, they're making what is going to happen through their real substantive contribution. And that we're all honoring that because we respect our own uniqueness, but we respect their uniqueness as well. So meaningful inclusion is a higher level than just valuing diversity.
I love that concept of meaningful inclusion and viewing that as complementary not only to people and our lived experiences, but meaningful inclusion. Brady, you mentioned of multiple disciplines. You know, as a failed folk singer and an amateur nuclear scientist, I appreciate that. So, okay, I'm kidding about the nuclear science part.
You know, I wanted to, as Ann is talking, it's putting a new framework in my mind for interpreting some of my own earlier experiences And, you know, when I think back to the time I spent teaching in a vocational agriculture, a boarding school really in Thailand, I want to just relate one of the stories of how those values and that inclusion came about among my own colleagues, my Thai teachers. We were all young vocational agriculture teachers in Thailand. And at that time, I was the only farang, as they call them, teaching at the school. And we, in the community, we observed an interesting division. And that was that across the river, divided from the rest of the town, was an actual leprosy colony. A colony where people who suffered from leprosy, which, as you know, a biblical kind of theme that I'd heard about, but it was hard to imagine. And so we would visit that. No one ever went there, but we got on our bicycles, the other Thai teachers and myself, and we visited and we observed what an incredibly sad plight it was. And so we began talking with other people in the community about what that meant. And they talked about how they were trying to get rid of the leprosy. And at that time, the only thing they knew to do was to separate the children at about 4 or 5 years old and put them in a school on scholarship where they could get an education, but it broke the cycle of the disease. And so all the parents wanted to do that. They didn't want to give up their children, but they did want to have a trusted institution. And so many of the public health system in Thailand and the missionaries in the country worked together to create a school for these children. We then said, but it required money. And so we said, let's do something to raise money. And now I'm talking only with other Thai people. And they said, we'll have a basketball game, because I was helping coach the basketball team. And we'd sell tickets, but how would we create a basketball team that would be of interest to the local population? And they said, well, you know, the merchants in the town were ethnically Chinese, all of them. They said if we could create a basket, and they love to play basketball, so let's go talk to them and see if they would develop a basketball team. And I pledged that I would recruit a group of foreigners from around the country, Peace Corps volunteers, children of missionaries. So long story short, and let me say, one of the most passionate spokespersons for this project was one of my women students. And this was the first group of women that had ever been admitted into the vocational agriculture schools. They were all men, but this year they admitted 4 young women. One of these women stood up and gave this passionate speech about how everyone should support this and sell tickets. So we went to the Chinese merchants. They loved the idea. They said, we'll put together a Chinese merchant team, and we put together a group of foreigners, and we had this fabulous basketball team. And I tell you, I think almost everyone in the entire community came out, and we raised enough money for 2 scholarships for the children at the school. And then after that, after I left, actually, that project continued for several years. And the last time that Ann and I actually then went back, we visited that community. The leprosy colony had been closed because they had successfully found medicine and with these kinds of progress to eliminate leprosy from the country. And it was like a blessing, really, to see that.
What
There's nothing,
story.
one of the most powerful moments of my life was observing that disease, I have to say.
I have so many questions. Who won the basketball game?
I think the foreigners won.
Okay, yeah. So
now they may have been letting us, you know, because we were the guests in the country.
I think that what you just described is you hosted the first international World Basketball Championships. I don't know. That's kind of what I heard.
True.
So.
You're right.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's what they have, but they had some great players.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. So that's a fantastic story about not being limited by the fact that you're a teacher with limited resources in a community where you're new. I think that's an incredible example.
And it was something that none of us were doing. That wasn't part of our job. My fellow teachers, none of us. It was just something we all felt was worthwhile, and it's something we ought to do to promote the quality of life there.
Isn't it amazing what you can do when you decide to take action?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. And
it was a big day, a big event. It's still talked about in the community.
I can't imagine. That's so neat. You're part of the community folklore.
That's right.
Well, I want to make sure that, I know that Anne also has a great story about, taking action, when there's perceived limitations. So, Anne, do you want to share yours?
Sure. I've been blessed with 4 wonderful children, and at one point I was, a full-time stay-at-home mom, especially when my 4 children ranged in age from 18 months to 9 years old. So it was a very busy time for me, but I was missing um, some of the international action that Brady was involved in. He was doing international research in developing countries at the time. And I was a little bit jealous. I'm very happy with what I was doing, but still longing for some of that action. And I happened to see an article in the newspaper that talked about an international peace camp in the only country in the Communist Union that allowed foreigners to come in and to attend this camp and to bring children from Western countries. Romania at that time in 1979 was the only communist country that had relations with the Western world and with Japan. And so I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful? They were talking about the need for counselors, for someone to take American children to this camp. And I read the article and I thought, but how could I do that? Because I'm here with my 4 children, but I yearned so to do it for 7 weeks. And I just kept thinking about it. And knowing that it built on everything else that I had done before I became a full-time mom. And so I talked about it, talked to other people, but most of all, I talked to Brady. And I never thought it would be possible. But as it turned out, because I was persistent, because I kept pursuing it, because we both as a team kept thinking about it, and Brady was generous enough to want it to happen for me, it turned out that he was so busy doing his international work and domestic work that he had never taken all his vacation. And when we put it together, it actually came to the 7 or 8 weeks that I needed. But we would have never really explored that. So Brady became a full-time dad, and I took 4 American children and represented America 11-year-olds. They were 11-year-olds to the Romanian peace camp through an organization called Children's International Summer Village, which is headquartered in London, CISV. Today, it takes high school students to peace camps as well. But at that time, it was only 11-year-olds because they felt 11-year-olds and were so impressionable that they would immediately make friends against all of the cultural barriers. And if they were friends today, it would be very hard when they were 18 to 24-year-olds to want to point a gun at one another. That was the thesis of Children's International Summer Villages, which operate all around the world and in the United States. So I want to encourage all teachers out there because teachers really benefit from stretch experiences, but sometimes we are so bound by our teaching obligations, our family obligations, that we don't even entertain for any length of time the possibility of something else. And I just want to encourage everyone to just be a little persistent and you might find a breakthrough.
What a fantastic story. And it's courageous and it's bold and it's practical and it's inspiring, and for you to be able to say we're going to do it and to go out and do it. That's just really, really a fantastic example for the rest of us. Brady, can I ask, which was harder, teaching ag and Thai, or coming back to being a full-time dad after all of that external work?
Well, I tell you, I made the most of that time period. I had tea with our friends in the community, mostly, the other housewives of the community.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
then,
you're a big
I
hit,
had my
huh?
sister come and visit, and I
Yeah.
took the kids on a vacation to Florida to see Anne's mom, actually. So I made the most of it and just had a fun time, really, with our children.
And what a great example for your children, for their mother, to see their mother actively serve in so many
Yeah.
capacities. Both of you guys are just great
It
examples.
was a great experience, really.
And all of our children, to follow up on what you said in terms of modeling, one was in Peace Corps in even a more remote area than their father was in Thailand.
Yeah.
Another son today is in the Foreign Service. Our daughter traveled internationally with an international choir, modeling social justice issues through music. And another son worked internationally in Hong Kong. So they all really just thought, oh, of course, we're going to do something international.
Well,
Parents do. That's what we're going to do.
Well, we always had a lot of international students, graduate
Yeah.
students of mine and others in our home. So working within an international cultural context was always a very natural thing from their standpoint.
Yes.
They never thought about it as being that different. So
Yeah.
you just go wherever the world leads you and do your work, do your best.
I do think at that point of having our home constantly filled with international students was very important, because they really, from a very young age, began to appreciate other cultures.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's been such a fantastic opportunity for our GLAG audience to learn from you guys. But Melanie, for me personally, just to get to visit with the Deatons, to visit, to see your legacy in action, and to see all the good that you're still doing. I mean, and just to say, well, here in COVID, we said, what can we be doing now? So we created an opportunity. We couldn't think of a better guest to help us teach about taking action. Thanks for your time. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you very much.
GLAG community, thanks for joining in this extended cut. And most of all, thanks for finding opportunities to take action in your own communities and around the world.
Tobin and Melanie, thank you both very much. We really enjoyed it.
Be
Best
well.
of luck. Success with the conference too.